The throne room of the Zeltharian Empire fell silent as Admiral Korath stepped forward, his ceremonial armor bearing the scorch marks of recent battle. King Vaxthan sat rigid on his crystal throne, his forearms gripping the armrests so tightly that hairline cracks appeared in the ancient stone. The Admiral's expression told the king everything he needed to know before a single word was spoken. "Your Majesty," Admiral Korath began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I regret to inform you that Princess Lyralee's reconnaissance fleet has been destroyed. The Korthak raiders ambushed her squadron in the Outer Rim territories, near the disputed zone of Sector 7. King Vaxthan's golden eyes dimmed, and the bioluminescent patterns along his elongated skull flickered like dying stars. Princess Lyralee was not just his daughter, she was the future of the Zeltharian Empire. At only 25 cycles old, she had already proven herself to be the most capable military commander in their history. Her tactical brilliance had saved countless worlds from Korthak brutality. "Show me the evidence," the king commanded, his voice steady despite the growing hollow feeling in his chest. Admiral Korath activated a holographic display that materialized in the center of the throne room. The assembled court watched in horrified silence as debris fields appeared in the air before them. Twisted metal fragments bearing the distinctive markings of Zeltharian warships floated endlessly in the void. Most prominent among the wreckage was a section of hull that clearly belonged to the flagship Stellar Dawn, Lyralee's personal command vessel. "We found no survivors. Your Majesty," Admiral Korath continued, "the Korthak hit them with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and something new, some kind of disruptor weapon that tore through our shields like paper. The princess's ship was completely vaporized in the initial assault." The king stood slowly, his towering 8-foot frame casting long shadows across the marble floor. His advisor, Counselor Threenock, stepped forward nervously. "My lord, perhaps we should—" "Leave us," King Vaxthan ordered, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "All of you. Leave us now." The court filed out in respectful silence, leaving only the king and Admiral Korath in the vast chamber. When the last footstep had faded, Vaxthan's composure finally cracked. His shoulders sagged, and for a moment, he looked every one of his 300 years. "Tell me about the battle," he said quietly. Admiral Korath manipulated the hologram, showing the tactical situation. Princess Lyralee was leading a deep reconnaissance mission into Korthak territory. Intelligence suggested they were massing forces for a major assault on our mining colonies. The princess took 12 ships, all fast scouts and light cruisers. They were supposed to gather information and return without engaging. The display showed the movement of both fleets. Lyralee's ships appeared as blue dots moving carefully through an asteroid field. Suddenly red dots, dozens of them, appeared from multiple directions. The Korthak were waiting for them, Admiral Korath explained. They had somehow learned about the mission and set a trap. Princess Lyralee tried to fight her way out, but they were outnumbered 5-1. Her final transmission— the Admiral paused, struggling with his emotions. Her final transmission was that she would not let the Korthak capture Zeltharian technology. She ordered her remaining ships to scatter while she stayed behind to cover their retreat. King Vaxthan closed his eyes, imagining his daughter's final moments. Lyralee had always been brave to a fault. Even as a child, she would stand up to older, stronger opponents if she thought something was wrong. That courage had made her a hero to their people, but now it had cost her everything. "How many ships escaped?" the king asked. 4 managed to reach safe space. 8 others were destroyed or captured. The princess's ship. Admiral Korath gestured to the hologram. There wasn't enough left to recover. The king walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city of Zelthara Prime. Millions of his subjects lived their lives below, unaware that their greatest protector was gone. The twin suns cast their light over the gleaming spires and floating gardens, just as they had every day for thousands of years. But today felt different. Today felt darker. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" Vaxthan asked without turning around. "We mobilize everything, Your Majesty. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon in our arsenal. The Korthak have gone too far this time. They've killed the crown princess of the Zeltharian Empire. This means war, total war." King Vaxthan nodded slowly. "Make it so. I want every fleet commander assembled within the hour. We're going to show the Korthak what happens when they murder my daughter." As Admiral Korath hurried to carry out his orders, the king remained at the window. He thought about Lyralee as a child, how she would sit on his lap during court sessions and whisper questions about military strategy. He remembered teaching her to pilot her first spacecraft, watching her graduate from the military academy with highest honors, seeing the pride in her eyes when she was promoted to admiral at the youngest age in their history. Now she was gone, her atoms scattered across the cold emptiness of space. Far away, in a system so remote that it didn't even appear on Zeltharian star charts, something fell burning through the atmosphere of a small forest-covered world. The escape pod crashed through the canopy of ancient trees, leaving a trail of broken branches and scorched earth before finally coming to rest in a small clearing. Inside the crumpled pod, Princess Lyrelay stirred weakly. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, and her left arm hung at an odd angle. Her emergency beacon had been damaged in the crash, and her communication systems were completely dead. She tried to move but gasped in pain as her broken ribs shifted. Through the cracked viewport of her pod, she could see an alien forest. The trees were different from anything on her homeworld, taller, with leaves that seemed to shimmer in colors she had no names for. Strange sounds echoed through the air, calls from creatures she couldn't identify, the rustle of wind through unfamiliar vegetation. As consciousness faded, Lyrelay's last thought was of her father. He would think she was dead. He would grieve for her, and then he would go to war with the Korthak. How many more would die because of her failure? She didn't know that at that very moment, a human named Marcus Chen was making his way through the forest toward the smoke rising from her crash site. She didn't know that this human, a member of a species her people considered primitive and barely worth notice, would change everything. Back on Zelthara Prime, King Vaxton stood before his assembled war council. The greatest military minds in the Empire filled the strategic command center, their faces grim with determination. Star charts covered every surface, showing Korthak positions and Zeltharian fleet movements. "Gentlemen," the king began, his voice carrying across the room like thunder, "the Korthak have taken my daughter from me. They have taken the future of our empire. This ends now. We will hunt them to the ends of the galaxy. We will destroy every ship, every base, every world that harbors them. They wanted war. Now they shall have it." The assembled admirals and generals roared their approval. Within hours, the largest military force in Zeltharian history would begin moving toward Korthak space. It would be a war of annihilation, fought with a father's grief and a king's rage. But far away, on a world whose name no Zeltharian knew, Princess Lyrelay was about to discover that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with fleets and armies, but with understanding and trust between two very different souls. The human approaching her crash site had no idea that he was about to change the course of galactic history. Marcus Chen pushed through the dense undergrowth, following the smoke trail that had appeared in the sky an hour earlier. His detector equipment showed high levels of unusual radiation coming from the crash site, definitely not natural. After 3 years alone on this uncharted world, studying its unique ecosystem, he had never seen anything like this. The scientist in him was curious. The former soldier in him was cautious. Marcus had come to this remote planet as part of Earth's deep space research program. His specialty was xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. What he had found here exceeded all expectations. The planet's ecosystem was like nothing in any database. Plants that seemed to communicate with each other. Animals that changed their genetic structure based on seasonal needs. It was a biologist's dream, but it was also lonely. Very lonely. When he reached the crash site, Marcus stopped and stared. The escape pod was unlike anything Earth's military had ever developed. Its hull was made from some kind of crystalline material that still glowed with residual energy. Strange symbols covered its surface, and the entire design spoke of technology far beyond human capabilities. Through the cracked viewport, he could see movement inside. Marcus approached carefully, his hand resting on the plasma pistol at his hip. The pod's hatch had been partially torn away in the crash, leaving just enough space for him to peer inside. What he saw made him forget every first contact protocol he had ever learned. The being inside was clearly female, though her species was unlike anything in Earth's xenobiology files. She was tall, probably 7 feet, with 4 arms and skin that shifted color like oil on water. Her elongated skull bore intricate patterns that pulsed with faint light. She was beautiful in an alien way that made Marcus's breath catch. She was also badly injured. Marcus made his decision quickly. He could analyze the implications later. Right now, this being needed medical attention. "Hey," he called softly, tapping on the hull. "Can you hear me?" The alien's eyes, large and golden, opened slowly. When she saw Marcus, she tried to scramble away, but a sharp cry of pain stopped her movement. "Easy," Marcus said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm here to help." "You're hurt." Princess Lyralee stared at the creature before her. It was bipedal and roughly humanoid, but smaller than any Zeltharian. Its skin was a uniform brown color, and it had only 2 arms. According to her Empire's intelligence files, this was a human, one of the primitive species that inhabited the outer reaches of the galaxy. But this human was not behaving as her files suggested it should. It wasn't running in fear or attacking blindly. Instead, it seemed concerned. "Stay back," she managed to say in Galactic Standard, though the words came out as a weak whisper. "I am Princess Lyralee of the Zeltharian Empire. Her demand was cut short as pain shot through her ribs. The human stepped closer, and she could see genuine worry in its strange, small eyes. "Princess, huh?" Marcus said, switching to his limited knowledge of Galactic Standard. "Well, Your Highness, you're bleeding pretty badly. I've got medical supplies back at my camp. Will you let me help?" Lyralee studied the human's face. Everything she had been taught said that humans were brutish, violent creatures driven only by primitive instincts. But this one's expression showed intelligence, compassion, and something else. Loneliness that matched her own. She tried to reach for her sidearm, but her broken arm wouldn't respond. Even if she could draw her weapon, she wasn't sure she had the strength to use it. "Why would you help me?" she asked. Marcus smiled, and Lyralee was surprised by how the expression transformed his features. "Because you need help. That's reason enough." Over the next several hours, Marcus carefully extracted Lyralee from her pod and transported her to his research station. The facility was basic but well organized, a collection of prefabricated modules connected by covered walkways. He had everything needed for a long-term research mission: laboratory equipment, communication arrays, medical supplies, and living quarters. Marcus's first priority was treating Lyralee's injuries. His medical training from his military days proved invaluable as he set her broken arm, treated her cuts, and administered pain medication. Throughout the process, Lyralee watched him with growing confusion. The human worked with steady competence, explaining what he was doing and asking permission before each procedure. This was not the behavior of a primitive savage. This was the behavior of a trained professional. "What are you?" she asked as Marcus wrapped her ribs. "I'm a xenobiologist," he replied, focusing on his work. "I study alien life forms. Been here alone for 3 years, cataloging this planet's ecosystem." "Alone? For 3 years?" Marcus nodded. "It's a big galaxy. Sometimes you have to go far from home to find something worth studying." Lyralee thought about that. She had never been alone for more than a few days. The idea of spending years in isolation seemed impossible. How did humans cope with such loneliness? "Your technology," she said, gesturing at his equipment. "It's more advanced than our intelligence reports suggested." Marcus laughed. "Intelligence reports? You guys have been watching us? The Zeltharian Empire monitors all species in this region of space. Humans were classified as pre-interstellar primitives." "Pre-interstellar?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Lady, I traveled here from Earth in a ship that uses quantum fold drives. We've been quietly exploring this galaxy for decades." This information stunned Lyralee. According to Zeltharian records, humans had barely achieved spaceflight. The idea that they possessed quantum fold technology that even her empire had only mastered 2 centuries ago, challenged everything she thought she knew. Over the following days, as Lyralee recovered, she learned more about Marcus and his species. He had served as a combat engineer in Earth's military before becoming a scientist. He spoke 5 languages, held advanced degrees in biology and chemistry, and had published research that impressed even Lyralee's trained mind. More importantly, he treated her as an equal. Not as a princess to be feared or a prisoner to be guarded, but as another intelligent being deserving of respect. The turning point came on her 4th day in his care. Lyralee was resting outside, enjoying the alien world's twin suns when Marcus's proximity alarms began screaming. He rushed to his sensors, his face grave. "We've got company," he said. 3 ships coming in fast. The energy signatures match your escape pod." Lyralee struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ribs. Through the trees, she could see the distinctive red glow of Korthak engines. They followed my trail, she said. Korthak raiders. They must have tracked my pod's energy signature. Friends of yours? They're the ones who destroyed my fleet. If they find me... She looked at Marcus, suddenly understanding what she was asking of him. You should run. Hide. They'll torture you for information about your people. Marcus was already moving, grabbing weapons and equipment. How many fighters do they usually send in a landing party? What? You can't be thinking of fighting them. There could be 30 warriors in those ships. Marcus checked his rifle and smiled grimly. Princess, I spent 10 years fighting opponents who outnumbered me. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. What happened next changed Laerali's understanding of humans forever. Marcus didn't just fight the Korthak. He outmaneuvered them. Using the forest terrain to his advantage, he set traps that exploited weaknesses in their armor. He used psychological warfare, making them think they faced a larger force. He employed tactics that were completely unpredictable, turning the Korthak's superior numbers against them. When the battle was over, 12 Korthak raiders lay dead, and the survivors had fled back to their ships. Laerali stared at the human in amazement. She had witnessed tactical brilliance that rivaled the greatest Zeltharian commanders. But more than that, she had seen something her empire had lost. The ability to adapt, to think creatively under pressure, to find solutions where others saw only problems. How did you do that? She asked. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. Humans are good at improvising. We've had to be. When you're not the strongest or the fastest, you learn to be smarter. That night, as they sat by Marcus's campfire, Laerali asked the question that had been building in her mind. What if I told you that my people have been wrong about yours? What if humans aren't primitive at all, but have been hiding their true capabilities? Marcus looked up at the alien stars. I'd say that maybe it's time our species had a real conversation. For the first time since her capture, Princess Laerali smiled. Perhaps her crash on this remote world wasn't the disaster she had thought. Perhaps it was an opportunity, a chance to build something entirely new between their peoples. But first they had to find a way off this planet. And when they did, Laerali would have to convince her father that everything the Zeltharian Empire believed about humanity was wrong. That conversation, she realized, might be the most important battle of her life. 3 months after Princess Laerali's escape pod had crashed on the unnamed world, Marcus Chen stood beside her as she activated the jury-rigged communication array they had built together. The device was a fascinating combination of Zeltharian quantum technology and human engineering ingenuity, a perfect symbol of what their peoples might accomplish working together. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked, checking the power connections one final time. Once we send the signal, there's no going back. Laerali looked at her human companion, though she had stopped thinking of him as alien weeks ago. Marcus had become her closest friend, her tactical advisor, and something more that she wasn't quite ready to name. Over their months together, she had learned that humans possessed qualities her advanced civilization had somehow lost. Flexibility, creativity, and an unusual form of honor that had nothing to do with rank or protocol. My father thinks I'm dead, she said. Right now, he's probably leading the largest military campaign in our history against the Korthak. He needs to know I'm alive. And he needs to know about us, Marcus added, about what humans are really capable of. The communication device hummed to life, its crystalline components glowing with stored energy. Within moments, they had established contact with the Zeltharian fleet. King Vaxthan was in his war room, studying tactical displays showing the ongoing assault on Korthak positions. When Admiral Korath burst through the doors, Your Majesty, we're receiving a priority transmission on the Royal Emergency frequency. The signal. It's coming from Princess Laerali. The king's forearms trembled as he activated the communication console. After months of grief and rage, the possibility that his daughter might be alive seemed too impossible to hope for. Father? The voice that came through the speakers was unmistakably Laerali's, though it sounded different, stronger, more confident than before. Laerali. King Vaxthan's composure shattered completely. My daughter, we thought you were dead. Where are you? We'll send ships immediately. I'm safe, Father. But before you send anyone, you need to know something important. I'm not alone. The king's joy was suddenly tempered by confusion. Not alone? Did other members of your crew survive? No, Father. I'm with a human. The silence that followed was so complete that Marcus could hear his own heartbeat. Through the communication link, they could sense the shock rippling through the Zeltharian command center. A human? King Vaxton's voice was carefully controlled. Daughter, humans are a primitive species, barely civilized. If one has captured you, he didn't capture me, Father. He saved my life. His name is Marcus Chen, and he's a scientist and a warrior. Without him, I would have died on this world. King Vaxton exchanged glances with his advisors. The idea that a human had saved his daughter seemed absurd, but Lyralay's tone carried absolute conviction. Very well, the king said finally. We'll discuss this when you return. Send your coordinates and we'll have a rescue fleet to you within— Father, you're not listening. This human isn't my rescuer. He's my partner. We've spent months together, and I've learned that everything we believe about his species is wrong. Humans aren't primitive. They're brilliant, and they could be our greatest allies. The communication channel crackled with interference as the king struggled to process what his daughter was telling him. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute royal authority. Princess Lyralai, you will return to Zelthara Prime immediately. This human will be brought for questioning and evaluation. Marcus leaned toward the communication device. Your Majesty, with respect, I'm not going anywhere as a prisoner. If you want to meet, it will be as equals. The audacity of a human speaking directly to the king of the Zeltharian Empire left the entire command center speechless. King Vaxton's bioluminescent patterns flared with anger. You dare address me directly, creature? You will submit to our authority or what? Marcus interrupted calmly. You'll declare war on humanity? Your Majesty, you might want to reconsider that strategy. Before the king could respond, Lyralai cut in. Father, send a ship, one ship. Come and meet Marcus yourself. See what I've seen. Learn what I've learned. But if you try to take him prisoner, you'll have to go through me first. The transmission ended, leaving the Zeltharian command center in stunned silence. 2 days later, the royal flagship Eternal Glory dropped out of quantum fold space near the unnamed world. King Vaxton stood on the bridge, his emotions churning between joy at seeing his daughter again and fury at her defiance of his authority. Scans show 2 life forms in the coordinates the princess provided, reported the sensor officer. 1 Zeltharian 1, unknown alien signature. Unknown? Admiral Korath frowned. It should read as human. That's just it, sir. The biological signature doesn't match any known human profiles in our database. King Vaxton studied the sensor readings himself. The alien life form showed signs of genetic modifications, enhanced neural activity, and physical capabilities far beyond what their intelligence files indicated for humans. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Threenock nervously, this particular human is some kind of mutant? An aberration among its species? The king didn't answer. He was beginning to suspect that the aberration might be in their intelligence files, not in the human. When the shuttle landed in the clearing near Marcus's research station, Princess Lyralai was the first to emerge. King Vaxton barely recognized his daughter. She moved with new confidence, carried herself like a seasoned warrior, and her eyes held depths of experience that hadn't been there before. Behind her came the human. Marcus Chen stepped into the sunlight wearing simple field clothes and a polite smile. He was smaller than the Zeltharians, as expected, but there was something in his bearing that commanded respect. He moved with the fluid grace of a trained fighter, and his eyes missed nothing as they assessed the Zeltharian delegation. Father, Lyralai said, embracing the king, I'd like you to meet Marcus Chen, xenobiologist, former combat engineer, and the being who saved my life. Marcus stepped forward and performed a slight bow, respectful, but not submissive. Your Majesty, Princess Lyralai has told me much about you. King Vaxton studied the human carefully. Nothing about Marcus's appearance suggested the primitive savage described in their intelligence files. His clothing showed advanced fabrication techniques. His equipment incorporated technology that seemed suspiciously sophisticated. And his manner suggested education and intelligence. You claim to have saved my daughter's life, the king said. I provided medical assistance when she was injured, Marcus replied diplomatically. The princess saved herself through her own strength and determination. Admiral Korath stepped forward, his hand resting on his weapon. Your Majesty, I recommend we take this creature into custody for proper interrogation. The movement was subtle, but Marcus shifted his stance slightly, and suddenly he seemed far more dangerous. Lyrelay moved to stand beside him, her own hand dropping to her sidearm. "Admiral," she said quietly, "if you draw that weapon, you'll discover just how much humans have taught me about improvised combat tactics." The tension in the clearing was thick enough to cut. King Vax then realized that his daughter meant every word. She would fight her own people to protect this human. "Perhaps," the king said slowly, "we should discuss this situation more privately." What followed was the most unusual diplomatic meeting in Zeltharian history. Sitting around Marcus's simple camp table, drinking human coffee, King Vax then listened as his daughter and the human explained everything they had discovered about each other's species. Marcus shared intelligence about Earth's true capabilities, quantum fold drives, advanced material science, genetic engineering, and military technologies that far exceeded Zeltharian estimates. He spoke of human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy, of observation posts watching alien civilizations, of a species that had been quietly preparing for eventual contact. "We've been watching you for decades," Marcus explained. "Your war with the Korthak, your expansion into the outer systems, your technological development. We've been waiting for the right moment to make contact." "And you believe this is that moment?" King Vax then asked. "With respect, Your Majesty, I think that moment chose us. Your daughter and I weren't supposed to meet. But we did. And we've learned something important. Our species have more in common than either of us realized." Lyrelay leaned forward. "Father, humans think differently than we do. They see solutions where we see problems. They adapt where we rely on established doctrine. Together we could be unstoppable." The king was quiet for a long time, studying Marcus with new eyes. Everything his daughter said made sense, but accepting it meant admitting that the Zeltharian Empire had been fundamentally wrong about humanity. Finally, he spoke. "If what you say is true, then we have much to discuss. But first, you will both return to Zelthara Prime. The court must see this for themselves. As equals," Marcus insisted, "not as prisoner and captor." King Vax then nodded slowly. "As equals. Though I warn you, human, my court will not be as receptive as I am being," Marcus smiled. "Your Majesty, I didn't survive 3 years alone on this planet by being easy to intimidate." As they prepared to depart, Lyrelay felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She was finally going home, but she was bringing with her ideas that would challenge everything her people believed. The real test would come when the great arena of Zelthara Prime had not seen a trial by champion in over 2 centuries. Built into the side of a mountain, the ancient amphitheater could hold 50,000 spectators, all of whom now stared down at the arena floor, where 2 very different warriors prepared for combat. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of controversy. News of Princess Lyrelay's return had spread like wildfire through the Empire, but it was the presence of the human that had truly shaken Zeltharian society. The court was divided between those who welcomed the possibility of a new alliance and those who saw Marcus as a dangerous primitive who had somehow corrupted their princess. Counselor Threnok had been particularly vocal in his opposition. "Your Majesty," he had argued before the full court, "this creature represents everything that is wrong with the lesser species. He has clearly used some form of mental manipulation on Princess Lyrelay. She speaks of humans as if they were our equals. It's an insult to our entire civilization." That was when Princess Lyrelay had stood and invoked the ancient law that every Zeltharian knew but few had ever seen used. "Call for trial by champion," she had declared, her voice ringing through the throne room. "My father's advisors questioned my judgment and Marcus's worth. Let combat decide the truth. The law was clear and absolute. When a member of the royal family called for trial by champion, even the king could not refuse." King Vax then had tried to dissuade his daughter, but she was determined. "I choose Marcus Chen as my champion," she had announced. The court had erupted in shocked protests. A human fighting against a Zeltharian warrior? It was unthinkable. King Vax then had been forced to choose his own champion to represent the court's position. After much deliberation, he had selected Commander Thaxion, the finest warrior in the Royal Guard, undefeated in personal combat for over 50 years. Now as the twin suns reached their zenith, the trial was about to begin. Commander Thaxion stood at the center of the arena, an imposing figure even by Zeltharian standards. 9 feet tall with 4 muscular arms and ceremonial scars marking his victories. He wore the traditional armor of a champion, lightweight but nearly indestructible, designed to allow maximum mobility while providing essential protection. In his hands he carried a pair of energy lances that hummed with deadly power. Across from him, Marcus looked almost comically small. He wore simple combat gear, the kind of practical clothing a human soldier might use in the field. His only weapons were a plasma rifle, a combat knife, and what appeared to be a collection of small devices clipped to his belt. King Vaxton sat in the royal box, his emotions in turmoil. He loved his daughter, but he couldn't understand how she had come to believe that this small, two-armed creature could defeat one of their greatest warriors. "Father," Lyrelai said quietly, standing beside his throne, "you need to trust me. Marcus isn't what he appears to be. Daughter, Thaxion has never lost a combat. He's fought Korthak berserkers, Vorthan assassins, and every other warrior species in the galaxy. This human, he's brave, I'll grant you that, but bravery alone won't be enough." Lyrelai smiled. "You're right. Bravery alone won't be enough. But Marcus has something more important than bravery. What's that? He thinks like a human." The arena fell silent as the trial master raised his staff. "Champions!" His voice boomed across the amphitheater. "This trial will determine the truth of the accusations made. Will humanity be recognized as equals to the Zeltarian Empire, or will they be shown to be the primitives our records claim? Let combat decide." Commander Thaxion raised his weapons in salute, the traditional gesture of a Zeltharian warrior. Marcus simply nodded politely, which drew angry murmurs from the crowd. "Begin," the trial master declared. Thaxion moved with the fluid grace of a master warrior, his forearms allowing him to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. He expected the human to retreat, to try to use the arena's obstacles for cover while desperately firing his primitive weapon. Instead, Marcus did something completely unexpected. He dropped his rifle and ran straight toward Thaxion. The Zeltharian warrior was so surprised that he hesitated for a crucial half-second. In that moment, Marcus pulled one of the small devices from his belt and threw it at Thaxion's feet. The device exploded in a burst of blinding light and deafening sound. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but more than enough to disorient even a trained warrior. Thaxion staggered, his precise movement suddenly clumsy as his senses reeled. Marcus didn't waste the opportunity. He rolled between Thaxion's legs, something no four-armed opponent would expect, and came up behind the larger warrior. Before Thaxion could turn, Marcus had attached another device to the back of his armor. This one released a cloud of thick, choking smoke that Marcus had designed specifically for Zeltharian physiology. While humans could breathe normally in the mixture, Zeltharians found it almost impossible to function. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their champion stumbled blindly through the arena, coughing and disoriented while the small human seemed to dance around him like a ghost. "What is this?" Admiral Korath demanded from the royal box. "These aren't proper weapons. This isn't honorable combat. The trial allows any weapons the champions choose to bring," King Vaxton replied slowly, his eyes never leaving the arena floor. "The human is fighting within the rules." Below, Thaxion was beginning to adapt to Marcus's tactics. The smoke was clearing and his superior training was reasserting itself. He managed to catch Marcus with a glancing blow from one of his energy lances, sending the human rolling across the arena floor. Marcus came up limping, but he was smiling. "Is that all?" he called out to Thaxion. "I've fought Korthak raiders who hit harder than that." It was a calculated insult designed to make Thaxion angry. Angry warriors made mistakes. Thaxion roared and charged, all forearms swinging in a devastating pattern that should have cut Marcus in half. But the human was no longer where he had been. He had rolled aside at the last second, pulling his combat knife as he moved. The blade sliced through one of the power cables connecting Thaxion's armor systems. Suddenly, the Zeltharian warrior's left arm was paralyzed, the neural interface in his armor disrupted by the severed connection. The crowd was on its feet now, unable to believe what they were seeing. Their champion, their invincible warrior, was being systematically dismantled by tactics they had never seen before. "He's not fighting like a warrior," Counselor Threnok protested. "He's fighting like a human," Princess Lyrelai finished. "He's using every advantage he can find. He's adapting to his opponent's strengths and exploiting their weaknesses. He's thinking." Thaxion was growing frustrated. Nothing in his training had prepared him for an opponent who fought like this. The human used the environment, psychology, and unconventional weapons in ways that made no sense according to traditional combat doctrine. When Thaxion tried to corner him, Marcus somehow turned the warrior's own momentum against him. When Thaxion attempted to use his superior reach, Marcus got inside his guard using techniques that seemed impossible for a two-armed fighter. The turning point came when Marcus pulled out his final surprise. From his belt, he produced what looked like a simple metal sphere. He held it up for Thaxion to see, then smiled. "You know what this is?" Marcus called out. "It's a gravity mine. Human military technology. If I activate it, everything within 20 feet gets pulled toward it with about 3 times normal gravity." Thaxion paused, uncertain. He had never heard of such a weapon. "Here's the thing about humans," Marcus continued, his voice carrying clearly through the silent arena. "We're small, light, and we're used to fighting in variable gravity. You Zeltharians evolved on a heavy world. Your bones are dense, your muscles are built for high gravity. This mine won't hurt me much, but you'll be pinned to the ground like an insect." Marcus held up the device, his thumb hovering over the activation switch. "You have a choice, Commander. You can surrender now with honor, and we can call this trial complete. Or I can activate this device and show everyone in this arena exactly what human military technology can do." The silence stretched for long moments. Thaxion looked at the small device, then at the equally small human holding it, then up at the 50,000 Zeltharians watching from the stands. Slowly, Commander Thaxion lowered his weapons. "I yield," he said quietly. The arena exploded in chaos. Shouts of anger, disbelief, and amazement echoed from the stands. Some spectators called for the trial to continue, claiming that Marcus had won through trickery rather than skill. Others argued that victory was victory regardless of method. King Vaxthan raised his hand for silence, and gradually the arena quieted. "The trial is complete," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. "Marcus Chen has defeated our champion through superior tactics and strategy. According to our law, this proves that Princess Lyrelai's judgment is sound." He paused, looking down at Marcus, who stood in the center of the arena still holding the gravity mine. "However," the king continued, "I have one question for the human champion." Marcus looked up at the royal box and nodded. "That device you hold," King Vaxthan said. "Is it real, or was it simply a bluff?" Marcus smiled and tossed Tay. The emergency session of the High Council began at dawn, just hours after Marcus's victory in the arena. King Vaxthan sat at the head of the crystalline conference table, with Princess Lyrelai on his right and Marcus on his left, a seating arrangement that would have been unthinkable just days before. "Your Majesty," Admiral Korath began, his voice carefully controlled, "the trial has proven that this human possesses unusual capabilities, but surely you don't intend to base our entire foreign policy on a single combat." Marcus leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, with respect, you shouldn't base your policies on outdated intelligence either. Everything your empire believes about humanity is wrong." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. A communications officer rushed into the chamber, his face pale with panic. "Your Majesty, long-range sensors are detecting a massive Korthak fleet approaching the home system. Over 300 ships, including their new dreadnoughts. They'll be here within 6 hours. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions. This was the largest Korthak force ever assembled, clearly their response to the Zeltharian offensive that had been raging for months in the outer territories. "How many ships can we muster for defense?" King Vaxthan demanded. "Maybe 200, Your Majesty," Admiral Korath replied. "Most of our fleet is scattered across Korthak space. We can recall some units, but not enough and not in time." Marcus studied the tactical display that had been activated in the center of the table. The Korthak approach was textbook, a massive frontal assault designed to overwhelm the defenders through sheer numbers. "They're making a mistake," he said quietly. "Excuse me?" Counselor Threenock snapped. "The capital world of our empire is about to be attacked by an overwhelming force, and you think they're making a mistake?" "They're fighting like Korthak," Marcus explained, standing to manipulate the holographic display. "Look at their formation. They expect you to meet them in open space with everything you have. They expect a glorious battle between fleets." Princess Lyrelai was beginning to understand. "But that's not how humans would fight this battle." Marcus nodded. "Humans would make them come to us. We'd use the system itself as a weapon. Your moon bases, your orbital platforms, your asteroid mining facilities, they're all potential defensive positions. And more importantly, he paused, looking around the table. The Korthak don't know about human technology. King Vaxton leaned forward. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe it's time to call in some friends. What Marcus revealed next stunned the entire council. Earth's deep space monitoring network had been tracking the Korthak buildup for weeks. A human fleet, small but equipped with technology the Korthak had never encountered, was already positioned just outside the system, waiting for his signal. You've been planning this, Admiral Korath accused. We've been planning for the possibility of contact, Marcus corrected. When Princess Lyrelai and I made first contact, Earth's government decided that formal relations with the Zeltharian Empire were inevitable. We wanted to be prepared. King Vaxton was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. How many ships? 30, Marcus admitted. But they're not like anything in your databases. The Zeltharian officers exchanged skeptical glances. 30 ships against 300 seemed like a hopeless gesture. Show them, Princess Lyrelai said suddenly. Father, let Marcus show them what human ships can do. The king nodded slowly. Very well. But if this fails, Marcus said, then we'll all face the consequences together. But it won't fail. Trust me. The next 6 hours transformed the Zelthara system into a carefully orchestrated trap. Under Marcus's guidance, the Zeltharian fleet abandoned traditional formation flying and instead dispersed throughout the system. Ships took position behind moons, asteroids, and space stations. Every orbital platform was armed and prepared for defensive action. When the Korthak fleet arrived, they found what appeared to be a lightly defended system with scattered resistance. The Korthak commander, Admiral Vraktar, smiled as he studied the tactical display aboard his flagship. The Zeltharians were clearly panicking, their ships scattered and disorganized. This would be easier than he had hoped. All ships advanced to engagement range. We'll crush them quickly and then begin orbital bombardment of their homeworld. The Korthak fleet moved forward in their traditional massive formation, shields raised and weapons charging. They had done this dozens of times before against various species. Superior numbers and firepower always won. That's when the first surprise hit them. 30 ships dropped out of quantum fold space directly behind the Korthak fleet, but these weren't ships that appeared in any known database. They were sleek, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their energy signatures were unlike anything the Korthak had encountered. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves, Admiral Vraktar commanded over open channels. The response came in perfect Korthak language. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in Allied space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Admiral Vraktar laughed. Earth? We have no records of any Earth in this region. Whatever backward species you represent, you're outnumbered 10 to 1. Surrender now and we might spare your lives. Admiral, came the calm reply. You're about to learn why humanity has been watching the galaxy for so long without making contact. We wanted to be sure we were ready. The battle that followed became legendary in military academies across the galaxy. The human ships didn't fight like anything the Korthak had ever faced. They used quantum phase technology to become temporarily intangible, passing through Korthak ships and emerging to attack from impossible angles. Their weapons fired concentrated singularities that tore through even the heaviest armor. Most remarkably, they seemed to coordinate with an efficiency that bordered on telepathy. But the real surprise came when the scattered Zeltharian ships began their attack. Under Marcus's guidance, they didn't charge forward in traditional formation. Instead, they emerged from hiding positions throughout the system, attacking in small, coordinated groups that struck specific targets, and then disappeared again. The Korthak found themselves fighting two completely different types of warfare. Simultaneously, human technology that they couldn't predict or counter, and Zeltharian tactics that they had never seen before. Admiral Vraktar tried to adapt, but every order he gave seemed to be anticipated. When he sent ships to pursue the human vessels, they found themselves trapped between hidden Zeltharian positions. When he tried to reorganize his formation, human ships would appear and target his command vessels with devastating precision. How are they doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. Sir, it's like they can read our minds. Every move we make, they're already 3 steps ahead. In the Zeltharian command center, Marcus stood beside Princess Lyrelei and her father, coordinating the combined fleet through quantum communication links with the human ships. The Korthak are predictable, he explained as they watched the battle unfold. They've been fighting the same way for centuries. They rely on superior numbers and firepower, but they've never learned to adapt when their enemies change the rules. King Vaxton watched in amazement as the combined humans-Eltharian force systematically dismantled a fleet 3 times their size. Your people, they fight like we never imagined possible. We fight to win, Marcus replied simply, and we fight together. The battle turned into a rout. Unable to cope with tactics they had never encountered, the Korthak fleet began to break apart. Ships fled in all directions, abandoning their formation and their mission. Admiral Vraktar, his flagship damaged and his fleet in shambles, broadcast a final message. This isn't over. The Korthak Empire will remember this. Yes, Admiral Chen's voice replied over the communication channel. You will. And next time you're thinking about attacking innocent people, remember what happened here today. As the surviving Korthak ships fled the system, King Vaxton stood in his command center surrounded by tactical displays, showing the impossible victory. Around him, his officers were chattering excitedly about the new tactics they had witnessed, the technology they had seen, and the alliance that had just been forged in battle. Marcus, the king said quietly, I owe you an apology. My people have been blind to what yours truly represent. Marcus smiled. Your Majesty, we've all been learning, but that's what makes this partnership so powerful. We each bring strengths that the other lacks. Princess Lyrelei stepped forward, taking Marcus's hand in front of the entire command center. Father, I have an announcement to make. Marcus has asked me to marry him, and I've accepted. The command center fell silent. Then slowly, King Vaxton began to smile. In that case, he said, I suppose we'll need to plan 2 ceremonies, a wedding, and the formal signing of the Humans-Eltharian Alliance Treaty. 3 months later, the royal palace hosted the most unusual celebration in galactic history. Princess Lyrelei's wedding to Marcus Chen was attended by representatives from dozens of species, all eager to witness the union that had changed the balance of power in their region of space. But the real celebration was the Alliance Treaty itself. Earth's true capabilities were revealed. To the galaxy, a network of hidden colonies, advanced technology,